Hello and welcome to the Guy Shrink Podcast, a bi-weekly show of no-nonsense, thought-provoking ideas and down-to-earth coaching for life. I'm Bill Roman, your host here, and we're recording in Cogito Studios in Toledo, Ohio. Yes, the Glass City. In every episode, my guest and I will discuss the stuff that might keep a guy awake at night. You know, ideas, regrets, feelings, fears, and the self-talk that always goes with them. We're going to discuss relationships and family and working careers, friendships, staying the course, leisure time, sports, life philosophy, and many other pertinent ideas worth considering. We all have these ideas rolling around in our heads. My day job is being a licensed counselor and therapist, and most of my practice is working with men who are trying to figure out life's big questions and little annoyances. These conversations, however, are not to be considered clinical advice. That's just not the appropriate format on a podcast. But if you think you might need some guidance in that direction, there's a lot of qualified clinicians out there who can give you just that. I invite you to discover Guy Shrink as a kick-ass practical show in the regular lineup of podcasts you listen to. And I'd love for you to drop me a line at bill@guyshrink.com with your questions or comments. Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks for listening. Welcome aboard. Keep moving. And remember, you're not dead, so you can't quit. Well, welcome to Guy Shrink. I'm Bill Roman, host here, and I'm with my good friend, compatriot, and partner in crime, Jordan Valdivia, who's my producer. And I'm with one of my very closest and best friends, Tony Combs, who I've known for quite a while. And Tony's a former firefighter here in Toledo, but now he's the operations manager running the city parks here in Toledo, which are beautiful places to rest and relax and work out and just have a great time. So, Tony, I'm just delighted that you've decided to show up and come to see me and to talk a little bit about what's going on.
I'm grateful to be here. I'm still curious as to where I fit into this puzzle. For the sake of being self-deprecating and accurate, should anybody happen to come across this podcast, operations manager would be 2 promotions above where I currently am, and my operations manager I would jump in a pool of flaming gasoline for right now. Her name's Jody Prude. I am not the operations manager. I'm the foreman for Downtown Maintenance Division, which handles all of downtown Toledo, which is a new position for me at that.
Yeah, it's a big operation, though. We got a lot of stuff down here.
It is overwhelming.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming. And coming from the background that I have of always being a hands-on, blue-collar, and proud to be so, almost obscenely so at times, where I would look at someone who dressed like me and go, you don't really have a job, you know. The transition from being able to look at when I was a carpenter or a fireman or buildings and grounds maintenance tech for the City of Toledo Parks Department, uncut field, and at the end of the day it's cut and it looks pretty and everything's great. So there's an immediate reward for seeing the work done. There was a cause and effect visual there. Learning the computer logistics and spending 8 hours in an office applying Visine 6 times a day because my eyes are bleeding from staring at a computer screen, and going home and feeling a sense of accomplishment is definitely a learning curve for me. There are times where I have actually stopped what I'm doing, grabbed a weed whacker or some other implement and went out and found something to do for an hour just to clear my head with physical labor.
So I have a sense of accomplishment when I'm mowing the grass versus working with people or working with a computer. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm learning to realize that work is work, irrespective of whether it's physical in nature or sedentary or cerebral. There's definitely an aspect that I have been happily blind to up until now.
Okay. Well, Tony, as you and I have talked before, the question I'd like to start with all my guests is, what keeps you awake at night? Because we want to talk about what are the things that roll around in a guy's head that might keep him awake or give him heartburn, or never in a million years would he talk to a shrink about, but he would talk to a buddy about. So what are some things that are rolling around in the head?
Oh, it's honest to God, for me, it's like spinning the wheel on the wheel of fortune. There's about 20 categories that I could jump into at any time, but currently it's with the new promotion. Am I doing my job right? Do the guys that work for me like me? I've got the answer to that. That's a firm no.
That means you're doing your job.
I'm figuring that out too. But, I guess like most guys, at least guys of our age or seasoning, there wasn't a lot of discussion growing up about, let's hear about your feelings, let's hear about your worries, let's hear about your concerns, the things that keep you up at night. My topics of, there's always a general theme that when I would try and go to sleep, I could be dog tired, and all of a sudden in comes the marching band, and we are going to, for the however many days I've been alive, celebrate all the things that Tony's done wrong in his life and questions himself about. Some of those have been significant events. There was a time where I hated going to sleep at night. I've mentioned to you before, and it's somewhat well known, not quite celebrity status, but maybe a little notoriety. I had kind of a crummy experience between 13 and a half and 16. Everything that went down in the Catholic Church as far as the priest abuse. I was, or I am, I would say these days, I'm a survivor of that. There was a time where I was a stone cold victim of that. All of the abuse that took place against me would happen as I was sleeping. I would wake up. So for years afterwards, I hated going to sleep. I could be 1,000 miles away from the individual that perpetrated it, and still going to sleep was not a fun time for Tony. But nowadays, I guess I'm getting a little wiser. Hopefully people won't use yours like I use other ones, but I use podcasts to take my mind to a place. It's got to be something that somewhat interests me, but that I don't have a firm grasp of, whether it be old school Art Bell and aliens and ghosts and the paranormal, or there's a number of them. There's the Art of Manliness. There's what is it? Jorge and something Explain the Universe. Two guys that talk physics. What that does is shuts off that vertical hold screen that seems to be broke in at least the people I've talked to, most of us, where we keep revisiting things that are either painful or we question. So the things that keep me up are varied. It varies day to day, but I think like most guys, we don't talk about it. Maybe we ought to, but acceptance, do I fit in? I'm 52 years old. This is not what I imagine 52 years old to feel like. I am nowhere near, largely due to some of my other less than wonderful life choices along the line. I am nowhere near where I thought I would be from a material standpoint. But conversely, as a result of some of my less than stellar life choices, I've had to learn the hard way, but have learned nonetheless. And there are aspects of my life where I am far older or far more mature than 52 years old that I'm thrilled about. It's a yin and a yang.
That's really great stuff that you're talking about. And while you were talking, I took a few notes here. I've heard a couple of things that, if you're interested, maybe we could do a little talking about that. I love I guess you talked about ruminating. Ruminating. That's another whole ball game. Ruminating is thinking about a cow ruminates. So a cow chews some grass and swallows it, and then
brings it back
pukes
up.
it back up, and
I'll
then
chew
chews
that
it some
some
more.
more.
Right. That's what we do when we ruminate. We just really kind of chew over things, and it gets worse every time. And that's one thing worth talking about. But you also talked about what I ruminate over. A friend of mine used to call those youthful stupidities. Ruminating over youthful stupidities.
I've got a closet full of them.
Well, I think we all do, and I think when we get to be older, that regrets, youthful stupidities, rumination is a lot of the stuff that keeps us up awake at night. And then two things that come out of that, I heard you turn on podcasts, various podcasts, for self-soothing. I think the whole topic of self-soothing might be an interesting thing to explore a little bit. What are some things that you do to soothe yourself throughout your life? What's been helpful? But I really resonated to your statement about the physical abuse that you encountered as a young man, about moving from victim to survivor. And that's an important psychological move that you made somewhere along the lines. And if we could talk a little bit about that sometime, about how did you move from victim to survivor, and what's the difference?
Well, I never told anybody what happened to me. So it occurred over about a 2.5-year time frame. At the time that it occurred, from a physical standpoint, I was, freshman year of high school, I was 5'3", 93 pounds. 90 of it turned into mouth. And there was 3% ass that could not back it up. I got smacked around, beat up, shoved into lockers, called all the typical, homo, faggot, whatever names, that had a similar meaning that they carry today, and even saying them, I'm worried, using that vernacular. But the impetus to the whole event was add in that, and then I'm the fifth child of 7. Good Catholic parents kept the diaphragm tacked to the bedboard, so to speak. Wearing hand-me-down clothes, and that, where do I fit in? I was a pretty boy as well. I had great hair. They call it a mullet now, but I had a bi-level. That's what we called it when I had it. At the time that happened, stuff in our small household, I shared a room with 2 brothers. 2 other brothers had their own room. My 2 sisters had a room. My mom and dad slept in what would normally be, I guess, an office or a den on the first floor. Hairbrushes, Aquanet, clothing. We used to go down in our basement and steal clothing out of each other's laundry baskets after my mom would fold it and put it in laundry baskets for us. And I'd hide this sweatshirt or whatever in my book bag and then put it on in school, knowing full well between 3rd and 4th period I was going to pass the brother I stole it from and get caught. But I got to wear the cool Coca-Cola sweatshirt that day. My sisters used to go ape shit because we would go in and steal their brushes or whatever. And for the style of hair I had, it was a vent brush. And I got accused of taking the vent brush, which I had done in the past. But this time I did not. And it was the first time I ever remember my mom saying, I think you're lying. I don't believe you. And I was crushed, just devastated. Legitimately, I could not believe. You tell me to tell the truth. The one time I do it, and you call me a liar. And I left the house. I had a couple friends of mine that I went through grade school and started high school with that were acquaintances of this priest, former priest, now deceased former priest. And through them, I had met him, and he had given me his phone number. Said, if you're ever in trouble or if you ever, give me a call. And I called him from the payphone at the corner of Glendale and the Trail, where West Haven Pharmacy, I guess it used to be. And he came and picked me up, and he took me back to my parents' house, and I was still pissed. And he said, you know what? Why don't you let me take him overnight, get him talked to, and what? And my parents were like, this is an answered prayer. Hell, here's a priest. And we promptly went to his family's bar. And I've cut so much shit over some previous publicity about this, and I'll get into it. There was a documentary made, and the pushback from some of his immediate family has been fierce, and some of it still goes on.
Oh, yeah.
Nonetheless, we went to his family's local bar, and He promptly handed me a beer and a shot and said,
At
relax.
At 14.
Yeah. Said, relax. And I sat in the kitchen and cooked burgers, and I went and slept in the rectory. And we got up the next day, and he drove me to school. And on the way to school, we went through the McDonald's on Broadway, and he goes, watch this. And he pulls up to the drive-thru, and the kid in the McDonald's is just trying to upsell like they're taught, and says, would you like a hash brown with that? And he reaches up and pops his little plastic collar out and looks at the girl and says, did I ask for a fucking hash brown with that? So immediately I'm like, this guy's awesome. I was an idiot. But it was the beginning of the grooming process.
Sure.
So
Sure.
Things progressed. About 6-7 months later was the first occurrence. And it happened about 36 times over the next few years. There were times I avoided it, but I never ran away. And I, to this day, if it had not happened to me and I was your buddy and we were both 14 years old and you came up to me and you said, hey, Tony, I got to ask you something, man. This guy, I woke up and this guy's giving me a blowjob. My response, having never had anything happen, would have been, I'd have kicked his ass. That's not what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up. He didn't know I was awake. And then I discovered, unfortunately, that your body betrays you.
Mm-hmm.
I probably had an erection because I had to take a piss, which is an every morning thing, or was an every morning thing. Now it's a 5 times a night thing at 52. But I digress. And I just laid there, and I froze. And then I had an orgasm. He went and started the shower. He got in the shower. He comes out of the shower and goes, get up and take a shower. While he was in the shower, I'm sitting there thinking, what in the... Am I allowed to swear here? What in the
Well,
fuck?
we can always take it out.
What in the... just happened?
Right. Right, you're mortified for sure.
I'm staring out the window, looking at the frost and the snow and the mist over the river. It's the usual land of eternal gray, wintertime of Toledo. Just shitting my pants. What do I do? And I thought, well, I start justifying it in my head that, well, he was kind of drinking. I drove home from
the night before.
Well, I drove his car from the family establishment to the rectory because he was hammered.
Right.
Halfway there, he pull over. I pull over in front of Bowser High School, and he's barfing on the side of the street at 3 a.m. I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah.
The second time it happened, I thought, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No, this ain't right.
But they just think now, we're talking, middle teenage years here, where our emotional and mental maturity is just not there.
But we think it is.
We think it's
age.
there, and the need for acceptance and acceptability is so strong for everybody. It isn't just one or two, and that we're almost willing to we are willing to compromise our essential self for approval, whatever you want to call it, and we'll almost do anything, which is part of why it's youthful stupidity. We just don't have the emotional wherewithal, to be able to draw the line somewhere along the line.
I went from being a detention hall commando to I could defecate in the principal's mailbox and not get in trouble.
Yeah, because you had somebody
was watching
your back.
I was one of his boys. I was late for class. I went to his room.
Yeah.
He wrote me a note.
Yeah.
Sent me down to Mrs. Hendricks. Mrs. Hendricks would shake her head like, here's another one.
Yeah.
But
so how
so
were you
victim to survivor.
Yeah. How did you make that transition?
It was very difficult. I went through a lot of therapists.
Okay.
I did not understand how therapy worked. I was still only telling part of the truth. I was still afraid to be completely open. Psych meds or antidepressants were relatively new.
Right.
Mid 80s they came out, and if you weren't on something, or are you going to therapy, or who's your therapist, was kind of a buzz line or buzzword. It was in vogue to go. But this was mid 90s. This was when I was about to get married and after I got married. And then when everything blew up in 2002, I probably went through half dozen therapists, and easily a dozen medications. I thought the pill was going to fix me.
Mm-hmm.
I also thought the pill was going to give me a buzz.
Mm-hmm.
It did neither.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got so angry, and then when everything popped off in 2002 in Boston, and I couldn't ignore it, I contacted the church. I had my mom contact the church because I was too ashamed to do it.
Yeah.
My mom set up a meeting with the parish priest. Parish priest set up a meeting with the diocesan case manager.
Mm-hmm.
Case manager said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to talk to the closest person to the Pope you can put me in front of." And assuming that was then Bishop Hoffman. My mom, my wife, and I, wife at the time, my ex-wife now, went and met with the bishop. And he said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "Well, I need to tell you, I'm not here to throw rocks through the stained glass. I'm not here to sue you. But I need the truth. If you tell me the truth, pay for my counsel and pay for my meds, I'm good. If you lie to me, the gloves come off. I will be wearing a sandwich board on Spielbush Avenue." And he said, "Well, if you're willing to, could you tell me what happened in as much detail as you can?" Bill, I said shit out loud that I had never said out loud.
Just saying it out loud and, so to speak, getting it out there, admitting it, is the first direction. Yes.
The smell of alcohol and cigarettes.
Yes.
The day after, over my shoulder.
Yes. Yes.
Meanwhile, my mother is behind me, just sobbing.
Oh yeah.
My wife is crying, and he looks at me and he says, "I said, so I got questions. Do you have any other accusations of abuse?" And he said, "No, none that I'm aware of." "Oh, wait, there was one. I believe he did this nerve hold thing to a guy, and he complained. He used to grab your hand and pinch right here, and it'd put you on your knees." And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm familiar with that. He did that to me a number of times too, but I appreciate your time." Like 4 days later, I get a call from a gal by the name of Claudia that was the local, probably still is, the local Survivors Network.
Oh yeah. SNAP.
Representative, SNAP. And I get eyes on documents that the bishop was aware in 1986 that there were accusations, credible accusations, from not only when he was here, but his previous assignment.
Yeah.
I picked up the newspaper at Station 7 one day when I was working. And, well, no, I'm going too far ahead there. I picked up the newspaper at home, and a gentleman I went to high school with, who was now openly gay, living in Texas, and suing the church, name on the lawsuit, not a John Doe, who was a friend of mine in high school. We all figured he was gay at the time. I could care less. Never makes no difference to me. A person's a person. You love who you love. I guess I've always felt that way. But I thought, damn it, these fuckers lied to me. They're going to pin this whole thing on a couple gay priests and some gullible young gay men. Then I opened up the paper at Station 7. I was getting off work, and I had hired an attorney, and the church went into this whole big denial thing. I called a news conference that night at my house. And at that news conference, Claudia had, with my permission, sent over two guys from Chain Camera Productions, Eddie Schmidt and Kirby Dick. They asked if I'd be willing to participate in a documentary that HBO was funding. I said, I have three requirements. One, I don't get paid. I don't want anybody questioning my motives. Two, you give the church equal time. And three, or at least offer the church equal time, which they did multiple times. And three, I got six brothers and sisters who, as my dad used to say, walk out of this house with the same name on the back of their jersey. If they don't want to be a part of it, you don't film them. If they're in anything that I film, you can't use it. And they agreed. Over the next year and a half, 2 years, what I thought I was going to be a 5-minute segment of a 60 Minutes thing turned into the Tony Combs Show. It
was a big deal.
A shit ton of notoriety and Academy Award nomination, Sundance Film Festival, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
Through all that, I was still angry.
Yes.
I wanted 1 pound of flesh. I thought if I do this, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to feel that metaphorical punch, and then I'm going to be okay. When the dust settled, I was still miserable, still angry. Mm-hmm. But by then I was drinking and using tremendously, or learning to drink tremendously, using pot. I had a history in the 90s with another substance, took myself to treatment and thought, well, I'm an addict, not an alcoholic. Spent the next 14 years working on the alcoholism part. But marriage fell apart. I fell apart. I was finally hurting enough that I decided that, and my mom pleaded with me the whole time from 2002 up until, so this is now 2008-ish. Tony, let it go. Move on. And it just it's still not that easy. It's impossible to do, first of all.
Saying let it go, but not saying how you do that makes it so hard.
And it was also just like being this guy's friend. Mm-hmm. Was a get out of jail free pass. Well, damn it. What happened to me was tell the world to go off. I got a right to be mad. I let that go. Now what am I going to do? Now I've lost my shield. I've lost my identity. I've lost my mask. But God, I wish she was here to hear it. In a certain way, she was right. There's so much of what I used to ruminate about, what used to keep me up at night, that I don't have any control over. Mm-hmm. Hell, I go to AA meetings now in the basement of the church mm-hmm. that I was first molested in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the first time I went to one, I was dating a different girl after my divorce, and she wanted to go to a Friday night meeting, and I thought we were going to a different meeting, and she's like, you just passed it. And I'm like, oh, hell no. I said, I swore I'm never going in that building again unless I got a gallon of gas and a book of matches. Mm-hmm. 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 And I walked down the stairs, and there's all the people I trusted, all the heavy hitters that I considered heavy hitters in AA, people that I respected who had great sobriety, where I thought I was going to have this huge mental, nervous breakdown, anxiety attack, and it was awesome. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But when I walked in, I looked up and I saw that window I was looking out of, and I metaphorically looked at that kid staring out there.
The 14-year-old.
The 14-year-old, and I said, right here, man, it's all going to be okay. You don't think it is, but I promise you it's going to be okay. Don't do anything stupid between now and then.
Yeah.
Which he didn't listen to, but.
Well, from victim to survivor is about, one of the pieces is about giving up my right to be mad. Giving up my right to be mad.
It was tough. To this day, where I say that letting it go or get over it, that you never will, it's a death of sorts. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's an acknowledgement that I didn't have the perfect childhood. It's the realization that as much as I wished for it, there was no surgery, there was no therapy, there was no hypnosis, there was no pill that was going to erase that section of my brain, So the difference is when I was a victim, and I'll speak for myself, it would be easy for me to say when we are victims or whatever, I'd see a cross, and that would piss me off.
Yeah.
A buddy would post about their kid's first communion. And this, by buddy, I mean like close friend knows everything. There's enough information out there about what went on that, to me, I love an awful lot of people that still hang their spiritual hat within the Catholic Church. And that is just astounding to me. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with maintaining my level of respect for them as people. Mm-hmm. But that's because I'm taking their spiritual choice as a personal offense.
Yes. Yes. But you know the difference now.
I do, and I did not.
Yes. Yes.
But the thoughts don't stay in my head for an hour or a day or a month. It's a passing glance, irritating insect that flew past my face.
Yeah. Well, you haven't mentioned the word, but what I hear operating here is the word forgiveness. And forgiveness, as a friend of mine used to say, forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. And or I like the idea that you talked about a death. Yes, forgiveness is about dying to a certain identity of hurt or victim that I have, and dying to that identity is, I'm giving up a lot when I do that. And that's exactly what I hear is happening for you, which is the move from victim to survivor.
And it continues. As a 52-year-old grown man, I can look back and see the different transitional curtains that I've had to pass through in life of letting go of those things. But that forgiveness, that definition you gave of, giving up the hope of having a different past. I always viewed forgiveness as a person to person. I got to tell that guy it's okay what he did to me. No, it's not. But I learned over time to even look at that guy as a flawed human and say, especially one of the odd blessings of being a former victim, now a survivor, is the amount of unintentional knowledge that you gain about abuse, about mental health. The numbers, the statistics are frightening, but that a lot of people that abuse people are recidivists, meaning that something happened to them when they grew up. So I remember being asked by a counselor, what do you think he went through? What could he have went through that turned him into this? I don't think everyone that abuses kids, physically, emotionally, or sexually, necessarily had a shitty life or a similar experience. I think there are people that are just wired sick. But I think there are a shit ton of people, and the evidence is there to prove it statistically, whether it be from domestic violence or alcoholism or sexual abuse, that in a weird, you aspire to what you admire way, find themselves being exactly who they swore they would never be someday.
Well, I think, but see, what you've done there to prevent that from happening is that you've built yourself a group of people around you to be kind of like your protective wall, to say your guardian angels. I call them tribe. That go, Tony, that's not probably a good idea for you to think about or do.
Oh, most of them just say, "Don't say that out loud," and that if you want, what's my biggest fear / what keeps me up at night? There's a Twilight Zone episode. I think it was called something like A Penny for Your Thought or Thoughts, where this guy could hear other people's thoughts. That you hear all these people on Art Bell and all these other shows that are clairvoyant or think they know something about somebody or claim to be able to read people's minds or hear their thoughts. And I'm like, God, I hope I'm never sitting on the bus next to one of these people, because they are going to call the authorities. They're going to Secret Service, because I think some absolutely batshit crazy stuff all the time. And I wonder, that's one of my keep me up at night. Am I the only one that, sits in the office during a meeting and looks at the pen on the manager's desk, who is just driving me crazy with her kind of flighty management style? And she's got this big fat pen that looks like a chicken. And I'm looking around like I'm Robert Downey in a Sherlock Holmes thing where he predicts the fight before he fights. He knows he's going to get hit and goes level to level. I'm like, if I grabbed that pen and just kind of leaned over like I was going to look at something on the desk and just grabbed her by the hair and started stabbing her in the neck, who in this room is going to stop me? This guy's going to run, that guy's... And then I stopped myself. Well, I told a coworker about it. So now the joke is chicken pen. When we're both going nuts sitting in one of these offices, she'll look at me and go, chicken pen.
Okay. But see, again, what I know about you and our friendship is that you've put together, while the office chicken pen might be one thing, you've put together a tribe where you say those things and somebody says, yeah, I think like that too. Mm-hmm. Or I got these kinds, and you find out I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as crazy as I think I am. And in that sharing of the mutual craziness, we find sanity.
And that's exactly it. I mean, God forbid I find a bunch of people that are encouraging. But I think really what that came from was the best counselor I had. God, I wish I could remember her name. You know, I was doing I don't trust you. And I know you got a report. If I make a threat, you're going to investigate. Have I bought the shovel, the tarp, and the rope yet? Do I have a plan? Is there before the veil of confidentiality must be lifted from a professional standpoint? And she said, surprised me. And I said, I think about killing this guy. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, look, I'm a licensed EMT. I got enough medical knowledge. I was a semester shy of graduating nursing school at one point. When I got on the fire department, I know how to administer an IV. I could chain this guy up in my basement and work him over to near death, bring him back, make him think he's my buddy, and then start it all over again. And she goes, do you got any IV bags at home? I said, well, no, not yet. And she goes, what do you mean yet? And I said, no, is it something you would ever actually think you would do? Well, no. Then explore those. Get those feelings out. If that's the only way they're going to come out, if that's the only way you're going to be able to express your anger is through thought, then that's not necessarily harmful. If you go to put those feelings into action,
That's correct.
then it becomes
Correct.
An actionable issue.
That's correct.
And that helped. That I thought, well, you mean I can think about anything I want?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
she said, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I used that as therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I do have an amazing group of people around me right now. From my wife, I got remarried 7 years ago. I think it's 7. Jeez, I hope I'm getting this right.
You better get this right.
It's either 6 or 7.
I'll give her a call later today. Find out for you.
Hell, I'll beat you to it. I'll ask when I get home. I know it was August 11th, but we got married. I met her actually in the first letter of the alphabet, capitalized twice, rooms.
Uh-huh.
If I'm following the tenets of that, which I realize I've blown out of the water already.
Uh-huh.
I got blessed with 4 daughters. As a result of it, I've got a biological son and daughter of my own. But through recovery, I have met some of the greatest people in the world, from Yale to jail. And as a result of something that I thought was just going to be permanent negative in my life, you're always going to be angry. This is always going to be a weight. It's up to you how much weight it is, which is true to some degree. I met people that were me 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that sharing, much like we do with alcoholism, we share our experience, our strength, our hope, which is kind of a tagline from the rooms and a tenet of the big book. You can do the same thing with trauma. Not saying you, as my dad used to say, you don't have to be a jet pilot to know that if you aim it at the ground, you're going to make a greasy smoking hole. To know certain things. There are certain givens. You don't have to be an abuse victim or survivor to counsel someone or help them heal. But I've discovered that I've got a way of talking that drives a lot of people nuts, that seems to get through, maybe in a relational way, kind of a scattered, circuitous, I promise there will be a bow on the end of this, of communicating with people. And as a result of the documentary, I've had people I've known my whole life come out of the woodwork, so to speak. I get calls from people overseas. They figure out my Facebook profile or my LinkedIn profile, and I'll get a letter or a message, instant message on Messenger on Facebook, that thank you for your bravery. Thank you for, and I always write back, thank you so much for reaching out. But if I'm going to be honest, I was really pissed at the time. There was that wanting to make a change.
Yes. Yes. Well, one thing's for certain in our friendship is that I know that out of that personal pain that you've had, that you have a unique ability to empathize with the suffering and pain of other people in a very, what I'm going to call, redemptive way.
I tend to approach things with, which is why the fire department was such a great fit, a gallows sense of humor. If you can laugh about it, you can learn to get over it. And not much before then, in my opinion. When I first walked into AA, I'm miserable, as most people are. Nobody accidentally goes, shit, I'm bored tonight. I don't want to watch Monday Night Football. I'm going to go sit in a church basement and drink shitty coffee with a bunch of grumpy old men and losers that the judge sent them here. They probably ran over a family or, responsible for the school bus. And you get in this meeting, and I'm shaking like a leaf, hungover as hell, probably still drunk. And here's these guys, some of them identifiable to me, that I've seen these people before. The last people in the world that I expected were going to be in this room, and they are belly laughing. And you look at the vehicles outside, and there's everything from a hoopty 71 Cutlass like we had to use growing up with 3 different colored body panels to a Cadillac. And there's this group of guys in there laughing. I'm thinking, this is not funny. Yeah. This is not funny at all. Yeah. And I'll be 6 years sober, September 28th. I started in AA 12 years ago. One of my character defects is often I think I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm the unicorn, as they say in AA, terminally unique. And I was a fantastic bullshit artist because that was the one singular personality trait that has crossed every single phase of my life. Acceptance, wanting to be liked, wanting to fit in. I was never going to be a jock. I have slightly more than 0 athletic talent. I never had the size or the drive for it. I discovered Glee Club, which was full of girls, and I could sing and wasn't shy about it. Didn't work out quite the way I wanted. I'm in what was permanently assigned to the friend zone, is what they call it now. I was not nearly as successful as I would have liked to believe I was at that age. But insecurity keeps me up at night.
Okay.
Do I walk out of this room and you guys go, Jesus, that guy's batshit crazy, is going to be a thought that I'm going to have. Of 10 o'clock at night, I'll go, should I call Bill and tell him, hey, man, I appreciate the opportunity, but you cannot air any of that. Forget it. I'm sorry. I'm taking back my consent form, whatever, if I signed one. Nope, this is career suicide. The bonus is most of the time I don't give a shit anymore. Okay. Because if I'm anywhere, I'm comfortable with the me of now, and I will apologize as necessary later.
Yeah. Well, Tony, as we wrap things up, it's just been marvelous sitting with you and talking. Do you have like a one-liner about maybe a little coaching line about guys that stay up awake at night at all?
God, this is the problem with being me. Every question that I'm asked, there's like this honeycomb beehive of potential answers, all competing. Learn to laugh at yourself first, or everybody else will. Okay. Don't take yourself so seriously.
Don't take yourself so seriously.
Or do the thing that most guys are petrified to do, and it's another one of my largest character defects. I've always viewed myself as the helper instead of the helpee. Let yourself be loved is what I was told one time.
Okay.
Ask for help.
Let yourself be loved and loved. That's a good way to kind of end this conversation. I do want to say to those people that are listening out there that any of the stuff that we've talked about today if it touches you, a nerve or a painful memory or a trigger of emotion or perhaps a bad memory or whatever, and you feel very disturbed, I mean, don't despair. There's lots of really wonderful and good help out there, and pick up the phone, call somebody, do something to help yourself. I love what Tony said about the power of forgiveness and moving from victimhood to surviving and even thriving. It's possible. It takes some work, but it's worth it in the end. And that laughter is really the best medicine. I can't thank you enough for being such a good friend to me over the years, and it's just been a pleasure to sit with you and talk. So thanks, Tony.
Anytime. I hope this doesn't kill your ratings, Bill.
Well, thank you, Tony Combs, and thanks for listening to Guy Shrink, and have a great day. As Robert Kennedy would end many of his speeches with the word courage. I think that's a great word, courage.
It's one I'm uncomfortable with for myself, but I recognize in other people.
Yeah, courage. Have courage. Well, thank you.
Thank you.